Welcome in, everybody. James Phillips here. I'm joined by Brian Hale as always, and it's the DME PrepZone Southern Orthopedic Game of the Week wrap-up show. Brian, we just finished with a full night of high school football here on Friday night, and had mostly blowouts, not very close games this week. But let's just roll through them real quick. We've got Decatur Heritage. They were hosting Summerton Christian and put it on Summerton Christian pretty bad, 42-6.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't expect this much of a blowout, but you look at Decatur Heritage is an annual good playoff team. They're really, really one of the more sound fundamental teams. Completely different from what Summerton Christian played last week in Hanceville.
Right.
Right now, any progress is what you're hoping for. Most people would probably say, well, how can that be progress? Last year, these are one of these games that they played, 6 to 8 minute quarters in.
Oh yeah, well I think last year they really only played a half, and then they called the game because there was some lightning and it was already out of hand. And then last week they went to overtime with Hanceville, and the last year's game, that one was like 44-0. So they're definitely showing improvement.
Yeah, you've got great progress at this point, and realistically, right now we knew that Summerton Christian is going to have to get through this week and next week before they can really start taking a look, because, next week, Sulligent, that's another really good playoff team.
Right.
So once they get through these next 2 weeks and learn as much as they can from them, I think when Summerton Christian gets into the part of the schedule where they're playing Cold Springs and Southeastern, that's when I see the real Summerton Christian comes out. Right.
Well, next on our scoreboard, and let me remind everybody, always go to dmeprepzone.com. That's where I'm at right now to look over the final scores.
Mm-hmm.
We had Lynn taking out Phillips 26-14 tonight.
Yeah, and I think Lynn, if this was played in week 4 or 5, a couple of wins underneath their belt, they blow out Phillips a lot bigger than this.
Oh, yeah.
But this is their first week.
Yeah.
They were off last week, so they get through the first part of this, first week jitters. They're going to explode. So look for Lynn to be really a good force in 1A this year.
Right. I know Jonathan Bentley had a good conversation with Lynn's coach. He was up there this week during one of their practices, and the coach is really high on the team. They've got a lot of players out for the Bears. I think they're going to improve. First game, they were off last week, so they're 1-0 now, 26-14 win over Phillips. That's a good win for Lynn.
Absolutely.
All right, how about we go to stay in Winston County, and we've got Meek at Winston County. Winston County wins 38-18. That's about what we expected.
Yeah, Meek's, I really don't know if they've got a whole lot this year. This could be a definite rebuilding and retuning year for Meek. It's going to be hard to find a whole lot of wins for Meek this year. Meanwhile, Winston County, we'll talk about this later on, but Winston County looks really good right now. The only thing is, when I look at the stats, it seems to be really all just rushing right now. Well, if somebody stops the rush, what are they going to do? That gets to be a little bit, and when you're getting well-rounded 2A teams in the playoffs, you're going to be facing multifaceted teams and multifaceted defenses.
That's true. All right, next game, another blowout. Corner 45-0 over Oak Grove.
That's not surprising in the least.
Right.
Oak Grove has steadily for years removed one win away from themselves every single year. Well, they were 1-9 last year. So the simple fact of the matter is they're probably going to go winless this year. Absolutely horrible program. Corner's clicking on all cylinders. I told Brett Elmore earlier on in my conversation with them, I strongly believe that our 3 5A programs are going to be 1, 2, and 3 in their region. I think it's going to end up being Jasper, Dora, and Corner. Not necessarily in that order, but I think those are going to be the 3 top teams in their region. All 3 are going to go to the playoffs.
Well, and we'll find out pretty soon, because next week Corner has Russellville, Jasper plays Dora, so that's going to be almost like an elimination type, semifinal type deal there.
Yeah, this is almost like a Final Four right here.
How about we go to Hamilton? Cordova played their hearts out and just could not get over the hump in Hamilton. And from what I was told from some people at the game, much like we've come to expect, the referees kind of played a role in that Hamilton victory.
Well, how much of a surprise is that?
Right. Hamilton wins 19-14. And a lot of times, people say you're giving up 10 or 14 just by going Hamilton.
Going to Hamilton. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, said the same thing with Brett earlier on. The only people that don't know that in this world are the people in Hamilton.
Right.
Either because they don't know it or they just refuse to know it. So, hey, look, great job, though, by Cordova. This game was played on a neutral field, or if it was played in Cordova, I can guarantee you this would have been a 17-point win.
Right, that's right. Big game with Winston County ties. Addison had to travel to Piedmont. Piedmont has only lost 3 games at home in the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
And they pick up a win over the Bulldogs, though, 28-16. But that's a 3A school playing a 2A school.
Yeah, and I heard this earlier on. Addison had 8 turnovers in that game.
Oh, wow, yeah. And that's
just
very
lost
unlike
by 12
Addison.
points.
Yeah.
I mean, that says something. But look, for me, this is how you could break this down. Addison does not play like a 2A. They play like an extremely good 3A.
Yeah.
Well, Piedmont doesn't play like a 3A. They play like an extremely good 4A. These were 2 top-level teams in different classifications that come out. And for Addison to lose by only 12 points and give up 8 turnovers,
Right.
that says a lot of something. I personally don't believe that Addison's going to lose another game this year.
Well, Addison was up at one point 16-14 in the third quarter, and then I guess it was the turnover bug is what beat them. Though.
Yeah. I mean, when you give 8 turnovers up, you're going to be expected to get beat, but by 30 or 35 points, not just 12. So,
all right. All right, let's go to Oakman and Curry. We've got some video highlights of this game as well. Curry struggling to start the year off. Oakman comes up with the win 32-13, and I think it was cruising. At one point it was 20-something to nothing there. I think it was 26-0.
Yeah, and I mean, this one wasn't a shock to me because I know what Oakman brings into the ball game. I know what they're returning, what all that they have there. If Oakman stays injury-free with that lineup, we could be looking at 3rd or 4th round, maybe even more for them. Curry right now, they're going to have to work on a lot of stuff. They have an offensive line, and really that's about it, which is a good framework, but you've got to have something else besides a framework. They're struggling to find that. So Curry might be going through one of those years that's going to be relatively tough.
Well, now, Brian, we go to our game of the week. We had 8 games this week, and our game of the week was at Dora, Battle of the Bulldogs and Battle of East Walker County versus West Walker County. And Dora comes out on top in a revenge from last year's game. Dora wins 42-14. Both of us were at that game. It was just a blowout from the beginning. Dora was much more physical and ran the ball really at will and stopped Carbon Hill's offense the entire time.
And the thing to me, and I take this also from the way that Dora played last week. Dora's playing smart football. They're taking advantage of turnovers. They're scoring in all 3 facets of the game. They scored a special teams touchdown tonight. They scored plenty on offense. They scored on defense.
Right.
They're playing smart ball. Both teams had 3 turnovers, but one of Dora's turnovers didn't really matter. It was near the end of halftime. That didn't really particularly matter.
Right.
Another one was when the younger substitution players were playing in, and then you had a straight turnover. So it was actually 3-1 in the turnovers. But they're taking advantage of it. They know exactly when to score. They have really good running backs in between Ikea Hosea and also Marcel Davidson.
Right.
And they got a good line that blocks. I mean, for the most part, their quarterbacks really didn't have a whole lot of pressure tonight.
Right.
On the other side, when I kind of look at Carbon Hill, they've got a good defense. Now, they held Dora as much as scoring. They held them to 254 yards.
Right.
Carbon Hill actually had 366 tonight. So they've got a good defense, but they're going through the motions of finding themselves on offense. But they do have some playmakers that we saw tonight. They're
Right.
not a blank slate at all. Carbon Hill's got some framework to build with.
Well, and a lot of that you talked about, Dora may not have had as many yards, but they scored on a kickoff return. They scored on a pick 6. So they found ways to score, and then when the game was out of hand, they weren't really trying to push that any further.
Yeah, they're playing good, smart, efficient football.
Right. I was able to catch up with both coaches at the end of the game, not during the game, but I was able to catch up with both coaches at the end of the game. and we've got some highlights of what they thought of each game. So we're going to go and listen to Coach Bart Lockhart now, and then we'll hear from Coach Chavis Williams as well. Big win, revenge from last year. You guys pulled it off. What can you say?
I was proud of the way the guys executed. We played a lot better than we did against Cordova. We did what we were supposed to do. We did what we were coached to do. And so I was really pleased with that. We really went back to the basics after the Cordova game was sloppy, and I really feel like our guys come out and executed the way that we like for them to in all phases of the game.
Well, you got a lot of young guys in too. That's
a lot of experience. We got a lot of young guys playing to begin with, but we got a lot of people in tonight, and it was a good night.
They start region play next week. What do you say about that?
Well, we're going to enjoy this one tonight, and we'll get to work on that tomorrow.
All right, congratulations.
Chavis, what can you say about coming home playing this game? It was a tough loss, but what can you say about your team?
Well, they competed. They competed for both quarters. We got our tail handed to them.
Right.
So, like I said, we know we got to do to improve. We start region play next week. That's a good thing about these first 2 weeks. See the test where we at. Get back to work tomorrow and Sunday. Get in the region play. Like I said, that
two tough teams so far.
That was a physically dominant, physical football team. It showed. Coach Lockhart did a good job with them. And they were ready.
Good luck next week,
I appreciate it.
See, Coach Williams and Coach Lockhart both, they knew how important that game was to both their programs. Lockhart was much more impressed with his team this week than he was against Cordova.
Yeah, obviously, and they showed it. I mean, they really did. And, of course, both of these teams, both of them are kind of at a crossroads. Right now, Dora is about to go into region play, and they're going probably into their toughest region play game.
Right.
Carbon Hill is about to go into region play and probably with the lighter of their region games.
Right.
So they're both at a crossroads right now. But, I think both of them took certain things away from this game that they want to work on, and there's some things that they can consider to be a strength, both of them going into next week. And it's like we said, it's region showdown time and some big ones.
Well, and one big thing with Dora too is their special team specialist Brady Spradlin was back tonight after being injured last week, and he really can flip a game for you. He had, I think, every kickoff was a touchback, and then he made every extra point. Didn't have to kick a field goal, but that's a big difference in the game that a lot of schools don't have, especially at the 5A and below level.
Yeah, and we had a little bit of fun for one thing, because in one of their final drive on the kickoff, there was a penalty that put them, past halfway point, and it was going to be a kickoff, and everybody knew it was going to go into the end zone. But what he was trying to do is kick a field goal. And everybody was doing it. He came up just a little bit short.
Well, I saw it. There was one, it may have been that one, where it bounced and went over the upright, and that was pretty fun to see.
Yeah, it shows his amazing foot power, but it really, he looked great on most things. He had some things that kind of went out of bounds that turned out to be negligible, but his punts were great. He connected on all 6 the extra points. And one of those was a little bit more challenging because of a penalty. It actually
backed him up a little bit. Yeah,
no problem with that whatsoever. In the return game,
right.
Return game from Dora was great. Special teams are special at Dora, I'm telling you.
Right. Well, and that's our game of the week for this week. For next week, I know you'll be traveling to Addison, and you'll see Winston County at Addison. That'll be a game of the week on our radio broadcast and on mountaneagle.com. And then I'll be traveling right across the street and watching Dora and Jasper. And we basically got 2 games of the week next week.
You betcha.
And those are going to both be, it's county rivalries, Winston County one of them and Walker County the other one. And it's going to be region games and rivalries. That's as good as it gets, really.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of games also around our area that we're going to really want to keep our eyes on, especially that Corner-Russellville game.
That's going to be a very key game to look out for, is Corner and Russellville, because Russellville, everybody thinks they could be the number 1 or 2 team in that region. Well, Corner thinks they're just as good. Dora and Jasper both are fighting for those spots. Those are probably the top 4 teams in that region. And we get to kind of see who comes out on top after next week.
Yeah.
Before we go, you want to talk a little college football?
Yeah, let's.
Well, at least just let's go over the Alabama and Auburn games. How about that? Alabama, not a whole lot of reason to talk about it. They're playing Duke. We've got some Crimson Tide has some injuries. We've got a couple players who may not play in the first half due to some suspensions, but really should be able to roll over the Blue Devils fairly easily.
I'm going to honestly think that this week and next with the injuries are going to be kind of, okay, let's resettle our depth chart for Alabama, because it's not going to be a whole lot of a challenge for them in the next 2 weeks. So let's try to get this settled. Let's see how it works all out. But the Tide rolls.
Right.
It's just, look, no offense to Duke. It's a fine university, but football-wise, I'm sorry, you're a little out of your league.
Maybe if Coach K was coaching the football team, I
Yeah.
mean, Cutcliffe's okay, but Coach K's the man over at Duke.
Well, if he could break down football like he could basketball, I would agree with that.
Yeah. All right. How about the biggest game? Probably the weekend's got to be, I would say, is the Auburn-Oregon game. It's being played in Arlington. They're at Jerry World, and should be a good game. Auburn's actually favored in the game by 3.5 points.
But we didn't pick that way, did we?
I didn't go that way. I went with Oregon, and this was probably the toughest pick of the week. I felt like you just don't know what to expect. Auburn should be much more physical, but Oregon should have the playmakers. They've got the experienced quarterback. They've got a Heisman Trophy possible winner quarterback, and some good weapons out there for him to get the ball to. That was the difference to me. Was I feel like Oregon has the experience edge. And Auburn is just there's so many question marks going into the season. They could win 10 games or they could win 6 games. I have no idea, but I think we really find out something with this first game.
You said a word in there, experience. Experience at quarterback. Who's got it, who doesn't? You're going to put on a national stage in the big lights, his first game, you're going to put Patrick Nix on that.
Bo Nix.
Bo Nix. You're going to put him on that, in that big spotlight, and expect him to run a no-haul offense to perfection.
Right.
I just don't see it. It could happen. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I just don't see it. And on top of that, Auburn's kind of stumbled in a lot of areas the past couple of years. The resounding running backs,
Right.
resounding wide receivers. They do have good line play on both sides, but it's almost like the Curry situation. Your line is your foundation, but you got to have more than a foundation,
Right.
or else it's not a house. Defensively, Auburn's probably going to keep this a lot closer than people expect. This could end up being a 10-7 game, but I kind of see the fact that Nix is going to have too much on his shoulder his first game.
I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think people are going to
it's gonna be
score. I picked final score 34-31. Oregon wins it.
Wow, you think that the Auburn defense is going to give up 34?
I think they're going to.
Wow,
Because I think the Oregon quarterback is that good.
Wow, okay.
Like, I think he can torch the defense some.
But we're both.
And I think the Auburn's offense is going to make a few mistakes as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
That will cost them some points.
But we're both in agreement that this is probably going to be an Auburn loss.
That's what I'm saying.
I got to agree with you there. And as a matter of fact, out of most of us that pick on the limb, Jonathan Bentley was one of the few that went Auburn.
And well, I think we know why. He's an Auburn fan. He's an Auburn graduate.
Okay.
So he's kind of got to go with his team.
I guess so.
Yeah. Anything else, Brian, this week?
No, thoughts and prayers back to my home state. I know I give a lot of hate to Florida
Right.
for a lot of different reasons, but we're about to get hit here in the United States by what looks to be a very severe storm, and right now we don't know exactly. They're saying that thing might do a C curve
Right.
and go up the north coast, which is going to hit my hometown and a lot of my friends,
Right.
classmates, or it could give something else. We don't know, but it looks likely right now that it's going to hit just north of Miami.
Right.
That's a lot of people down there.
Oh yeah, definitely be thinking about that. And I'd like you said, they don't really know where it's going. I was watching during halftime of the Dora game. I pulled up something on my phone and was watching, and they were talking about, and it could go anywhere at this point. So that's pretty odd too.
Yeah, and which the longer the thing stays out in the water is when it really scares me even more.
Right.
I've lived through a whole bunch of hurricanes. I can tell you, you want it on land as quick as possible so it can break some of that down.
Right.
It stays about in that water. It's bad news.
Right. Well, hey, for Brian Hale, I'm James Phillips. Thanks for tuning in this week. Be sure to hit the little subscribe button, and then I think there's a little alarm button or something like that you got to hit too, so you get the notifications. Be sure to hit those things so you know when our videos are coming out. We'll have our preview show next week. Also, we've always got the Coach Brian Moore show with me and Coach Moore from Jasper. Check those out each week. And just thanks for tuning in, and thanks for reading the Daily Mountain Eagle. We'll see you guys next week.